A dog wouldn't stop barking. A janitor saw something he shouldn't. And room 713? It wasn't on any map. What they found inside shook the government and nearly erased them. This is the story. They tried to bury. If truth matters to you, subscribe. Because we remember what they want forgotten. Rain fell like silver needles across the city, slicing through fog and neon with a surgeon's precision. From the 42nd floor of the Halberd Hotel, you could watch the clouds descend on the skyline like curtains, softening the edges of wealth and power into a watercolor of privilege. But down in the lobby, where marble met leather and the smell of expensive diffuser oils masked even the faintest scent of human struggle, the world remained untouched, sealed, clinical. The Halberd was not a place people stumbled into. It was curated from the playlist that floated gently beneath the hush of whispered conversations, to the Turkish rugs that had never felt the indignity of mud. Bellboys rolled carts adorned with designer luggage, whispering in choreographed movements. A concierge in a tailored navy vest adjusted his gold name tag in the reflection of the glass wall. Everything gleamed. Everything was intentional. Until the revolving door turned. No wind, no thunderclap. Just a man alone. His coat was soaked through, clinging to his back in wet folds. His pants, once military issue, sagged over boots cracked at the seams. Rainwater dripped from his hood in slow, patient drops, creating small, shameful puddles on the immaculate white floor. Ernest Haley stood at the threshold. He didn't apologize for the mess he brought with him. He simply walked 2 quiet steps forward and exhaled, like someone returning to the place where they last saw a ghost. The couple at the fireplace stopped talking. A father with a stroller suddenly turned his child away. Behind the front desk, the concierge looked up, and something shifted in his eyes. Not quite alarm. More like contempt dressed in civility. Ernest walked with a limp barely perceptible unless you were looking. He moved toward a corner chair under the golden glass chandelier and lowered himself into it like a man familiar with pain. For a moment, no one said anything. Then, the ripple began. A soft buzz into the earpiece of the lobby. Security. The older guard Rogers, 52, salt and pepper hair, ex-cop, tilted his head slightly. He was already walking before the younger one, Mitchell, got the signal. Mitchell was 27, built like a wall, and still believed in saving the day before the day needed saving. Together, they approached. "Sir," Rogers said with professional courtesy, "can we help you with something?" Ernest looked up. His eyes were a washed-out gray, not old, weathered. "Just warming up. Got caught in the rain." "This is private property," Mitchell chimed in, shifting his stance. "You can't stay here." Ernest held up a hand, not in defense, but like a peace offering. "Someone's coming to meet me. I won't be long." "We can't allow loitering," Rogers replied, softer now. The exchange was polite, firm. Practice. Then came Delta. From behind the velvet rope that divided staff from guests, the sound of paws on tile echoed like a memory. Delta walked slowly, hips stiff, ears perked. The old German shepherd, once sharp, now mellowed with years, was supposed to stay in the back. But hearing the tone of Mitchell's voice, he had come. The dog sniffed the air, then paused. His body froze, muscles remembering something his brain had yet to catch up to. He turned his head and saw Ernest. They locked eyes. Delta padded forward. No bark, no warning. Just a wag of the tail. 1, 2. The dog sat down at Ernest's feet. Silence. Rogers blinked. "That single quotes S. Different," he murmured. Mitchell stepped forward. "Delta, back, come." The dog didn't move. Ernest, slowly, reached down and ran a hand along Delta's back. The dog leaned into it, a soft whine escaping his muzzle like an exhale. Held too long, the concierge stepped out from behind the desk, now wearing the smile of someone who believes he's in control. "Sir, we need you to leave." This is a luxury establishment. Ernest looked up, brushing a drop of water from his cheek. Used to be a different kind of establishment, he said. The concierge frowned. Excuse me? This building, Ernest continued, almost to himself, was a government annex. Underground levels, meetings, security clearances. 20 years ago, Mitchell scoffed. Right. What were you, CIA? Ernest didn't respond. Rogers frowned. He looked at Delta, who was still planted like a statue beside the man. You know him? Rogers asked the dog quietly. Delta licked Ernest's hand. The concierge's voice tightened. I need him out. Now Rogers hesitated. Mitchell did not. He reached for Ernest's arm. That's when Delta growled. Not a full-throated snarl. Just a low, primal vibration. Protective, unmistakable. Everyone froze. Ernest's voice was quiet. I'm not staying. Just warming up. 5 minutes. We don't have a 5-minute policy for vagrants. The concierge snapped. Mitchell flinched slightly at the word. Ernest stood. Slow. Tall. Water dripped from his coat onto the tile. Delta rose with him. You think I'm a vagrant, Ernest said. Because of how I look. I think you're trespassing, Rogers corrected. But even he sounded unsure now. The revolving door turned again. A woman stepped out. Mid-20s, almond skin, hair pulled into a bun. Business casual. Backpack over one shoulder. ID clipped to her sweater. Nadia Lee, intern, law student. Invisible. To most, but not to Delta. The dog turned his head. She stopped. Looked at Ernest. Then the dog. Then at Rogers. What's going on? Nothing you need to worry about, Miss Lee, said the concierge. Already ushering her toward the elevators, she frowned. That man didn't do anything, and you are? Mitchell asked. A guest, same as anyone. And I saw you touch him first. Rogers stiffened. Ernest met her gaze. There was something unspoken in it. Nadia didn't look away. Delta trotted over to her, tail wagging. She scratched his ear without thinking. The dog licked her wrist. He knows you, she whispered. Not me, Ernest replied. Someone I was. The lobby pulsed with confusion, with history. With something far older than marble and concierge desks, outside. Thunder rumbled. Inside, a reckoning had begun. The elevator doors shut with a soft sigh behind Nadia, but her heart was still pounding from what she had just witnessed. She couldn't explain why it had gotten under her skin, the way the man had stood so still in the center of that lobby, the quiet deference in his voice, the way Delta, the building's half-retired K-9, had leaned against him like an old friend. She should have kept walking. She was just an intern. An intern at a corporate law firm that rented 4 floors of the Halberd. She was on borrowed time, with borrowed access, and a future that depended on not making waves. But something about the moment kept echoing in her chest, like a sound she couldn't place. So she turned around. Instead of heading to the 35th floor, she swiped her badge into the sublevel archives, a place interns weren't technically allowed. Without supervision, the archive room was a converted wine cellar, left over from before the Halberd became a hotel. Stone walls, low ceilings, and fluorescent lighting gave it a bunker-like feel. The terminal at the far end blinked patiently. She logged in using a side credential she'd memorized when helping her supervisor. Debug system errors. She typed one word. Halle.nothing. She added Ernest. Still nothing. Then, remembering his face, the uniform boots, the way he'd said, I served in this building, she changed search parameters from guest registry to historical federal records. The system stalled. Then blinked. Access restricted. Classified. File number 387A. Her cursor hovered. She clicked anyway. Enter override pièce estéblouard. She leaned back in the chair. Her mind raced. Then she remembered a coffee order. 2 weeks ago, she'd delivered a drink to a meeting between a retired military contractor and the head of the building's private security. On the printed agenda, she'd seen a line she thought odd at the time, Review file number 387A, pending declassification by next of kin. Next of kin? She opened the personnel files of the building's original function. It had once housed a Department of Defense sub-agency called OSAT, Office of Strategic Asset Tracking. The kind of acronym that sounded boring but usually meant anything. But she cross-referenced OSID with Holly.match found. Her screen flashed. She braced. A single page appeared. Most of it redacted. File 387A, subject highly. Ernest. Classification. Alpha level asset. Lang plus field operative. Languages fluent. 7 special clearance. Coded cum relays. Non-uniform infiltration status. MIA-2009. Presumed deceased. Last mission. Operation Windlock, Afghanistan front. Subject reported corruption within domestic contractor network operation. Shuttered internal note. Do not engage without federal ESU or Nadia stared at. The words until they stopped swimming. MIA, presumed dead. She pulled her phone from her bag and snapped a photo of the screen. Then she heard a voice. Looking for something? She jumped. It was Rogers, the older security guard, standing at the door. Her throat clenched. I was just, he used to come here a long time ago, Rogers said, stepping in. Before it was all marble and minibar menus. She hesitated. You know him? Rogers looked at the ground. I saw him once, years ago. Different building. Different country. He translated a whole hostage negotiation in 3 languages without blinking. Got 2 kids out alive. The soldier next to me called him a ghost. Said he went where cameras couldn't. So why is he homeless? Rogers exhaled. Because ghosts don't get pensions. Upstairs, Ernest sat on a bench just outside the lobby's overhang. The rain had turned to a mist, but the world was still gray. Delta sat beside him. Ernest pulled a small, cracked photo from his coat pocket. In it, a young man in uniform stood beside a boy, both of them laughing. The boy held a toy helicopter. The man wore a patch with a hawk and lightning bolt, OSAT emblem. He looked down at Delta. They buried us, paper by paper. Then said we never existed. Delta whined. Across the street, a car pulled into view. A black SUV with tinted windows. Ernest folded the photo and slipped it back into his coat. He stood. So did Delta. Inside the hotel, Nadia stood frozen. She looked down at the screen again. Then back at the closed archive door. Her reflection looked back at her. Don't make waves, she whispered. Right. She grabbed her phone and left. The rain had stopped, but the wind lingered. It twisted through the alleyways and between the buildings like a restless thing, carrying with it the scent of something older than concrete, something left behind. The SUV sat idle in front of the alley beside the Halbert Hotel. Delta, obedient as ever, jumped into the back seat. Ernest followed more slowly, gripping the doorframe like a man unsure whether he was walking into safety or surrender. The door closed behind him with a finality that made his bones ache. Agent Vos sat beside him, tablet balanced on her knee. Eyes hidden behind opaque lenses. They saw you, she said. On security feed, on the sidewalk, in the lobby, with the dog. Delta's retired, Ernest muttered. I didn't ask him to follow. But he did. Silence. Outside the city blurred past. Streetlights strobed across the window like memories flashing through a dream. Ernest didn't watch them. His eyes were closed. But he wasn't asleep. Agent Vos kept talking. Do you remember the terms of your exit, Mr. Hawley? There were no terms. There was only forgetting. You were granted anonymity in exchange for silence. We protected you. He turned his head, one eye opening just slightly. Protected me? You erased me. They drove an hour south, away from the city, past checkpoints, past abandoned depots, into a compound ringed with fences no one remembered building. The sign at the entrance read FT Caver in faded gray. No lights beyond the gate, no names on the directory. Just steel, stone, and silence. Ernest stepped out. Delta followed. Neither flinched when the gate slammed shut behind them. Inside, the walls were lined with monitors, flickering with decades of surveillance footage. A hallway branched off to rows of sealed rooms. One of them was marked redacted in red paint, not a file. A room. They led Ernest past it. Into a chamber colder than outside. Table, chair, mirror, recorder. Agent Vos slid a folder across the metal. Do you know what this is? He opened it. Photos, grainy, infrared. One showed him kneeling over a child in a dusty village. Another showed Delta beside a pile of rubble, unmoving but alert. The third was aerial. A convoy in flames. Ernest didn't speak. That was Windlock, she said. He nodded. I remember. We never released this footage. Not even internally. You were never supposed to. She leaned forward. So why are people asking about it now? Ernest looked up slowly. Because the people who lived through it are finally ready to talk. Meanwhile, Nadia stood in the shelter where Roy, the old veteran, held court like a ghost king. He smoked a pipe carved from bone. The smoke made the room feel more like a memory than a place. You want to know about Ernest? He said. Nadia nodded. I knew him before he disappeared. And after, but those are two different men. He said something. About Windlock, about children, about being erased. Roy's laugh was sandpaper. He was a ghost even when he was active. 7 languages, 3 dialects. Nobody knew where he was sent or what he came back carrying. Only thing we knew, he could end wars with a whisper. So why did they bury him? Roy blew smoke toward the ceiling. Because he saw too much, and then he told. In the base, Ernest sat at the edge of the cot in a holding room. Delta rested at his feet, breathing slowly. He pulled from his coat a folded paper, a drawing, crayon, a boy's handwriting. The name at the top, Amir. He closed his eyes. Flashbacks came fast. A boy running through smoke, holding his sister's hand. A soldier screaming orders in English, not realizing no one understood. Ernest shouting in Dari, Pashto French. A contractor pulling a trigger without warning. He opened his eyes. Looked at Delta. You remember that village, boy? Delta blinked. We weren't supposed to be there, but we were. Because someone made a mistake, and we stayed. Because someone had to. Delta whined softly, moved closer. Ernest scratched behind his ears, and then they pretended it never happened. Back in the city, Nadia opened the envelope that had appeared on her desk. Inside, a list of names, dates, coordinates, operation code names. Some were crossed out. One had a star, Hale, another had a warning in red. Do not contact, and at the bottom a note. They think ghosts don't talk, but some of them scream. Nadia stared. Then picked up her phone. She called Roy. I think I found where he was sent after Windlock. Where? Here, the halberd. Ernest stood in a hallway deep within the base. Agent Voss walked beside him. This was once a debriefing center, she said. Now it's a mausoleum of secrets. They passed a glass case. Inside, an old nameplate. Lt. Hale, Ernest 243BH. He stopped. Why keep this if I was erased? Voss shrugged. Sometimes even ghosts need somewhere to rest. He looked at her. You're not here to protect me. You're here to contain me. And you're not here to confess. You're here because someone out there started remembering. She held up a photo. A child. Same one from Windlock. Older now. American hoodie. Skateboard under one arm. He's alive. We found him. Ernest stared. Amir. Voss nodded. Lives in Virginia now. Foster system. Quiet. He never talks about the war. Until last month. Ernest swallowed. He remembered me. He remembered everything. The next morning came slow and silent inside Fort Caver. The bass didn't hum or beep like the others Ernest had passed through in younger years. It simply existed, like an open wound, held together by paperwork and protocol. Agent Voss brought him a paper cup of coffee. No cream, no sugar. They traced your presence to the halberd. One of our internal threat systems flagged a familiar gait on a retired dog, she said. Ernest smiled faintly. Delta's gait got me flagged? You don't limp like most men your age. You limp like a man who's hiding pain from a bullet that never healed right. The algorithm noticed. How flattering. She pulled a chair. We still don't know how much the intern knows. She has more integrity than your department. That makes her dangerous, I suppose. Voss ignored the jab. I want to talk about Doreen. She slid another file toward him. Inside. Photos of another man, big, beard, always in sunglasses. Patches on his contractor vest read Nemo Securities and Oplock Coordinator. He was Windlock's field commander, Voss said. Now he runs private. Drills for high-risk VIPs. Last week he gave a TED Talk. Ernest closed the file. He executed a family in front of me. Said collateral damage builds deterrence. I believe you. Do they? That's the problem, Holly. Some do. But many don't. Care. He shook his head slowly. You know what they used to say? That truth is the first casualty of war. That's wrong. Empathy is. Voss leaned forward. We want you to testify, Ernest, before a closed committee. Give us the real narrative, before someone leaks a wrong one. He stared long at her, then said, only if Nadia's in the room. Elsewhere. Nadia rode a train headed south, earbuds in, but nothing playing. She was staring at the photo of Amir. Her laptop showed satellite imagery overlaid with past operations in Kandahar. Windlock kept appearing as a shadow in redacted reports. It wasn't supposed to be hers to find, but now she couldn't unsee it. A child who survived. A ghost who saved him. A hotel lobby that had become a tombstone. Roy met her at Union Station with a file folder yellowed at the edges. This was mine, he said. From the old VA days, I wasn't supposed to keep it. I wasn't supposed to care. But Holly... he made us care. Inside were letters from parents in the Middle East, addressed in broken English to a man they only knew as the translator. Who didn't run. Each thanked him. Some begged to know if their children were alive. The system lost them. But he didn't, Roy said. You want to understand him? Read the people who remember him. Nadia did. For hours, meanwhile, Ernest stood at an old shooting range behind Fort Caver, gun in hand. Delta sat quietly nearby. Agent Voss watched from a distance. Still got it? She asked. He fired. Bullseye. Twice. Guns aren't the problem, he muttered. It's who tells them when to speak. 2 nights later, a classified hearing was held in a room buried 4 stories beneath the Capitol. The panel of officials was anonymous to most. But Ernest knew all their faces. He stepped to the mic, adjusted it slightly, and pulled from his coat a folder. My name is Ernest Hillay, Asset 243B, Department of Strategic Communication. Clearance level Echo, fluent in 7 tongues, and none of them could speak louder than your silence. He paused. This is what you told us. Keep the narrative. Simple, win hearts and minds. But when we saw what your wars really looked like, we were told to forget. Windlock wasn't a failure. It was a massacre. What you failed to do was hide it. He placed a photo on the table. Amir, younger, smiling. He remembered me. That means something. That means I didn't vanish. He looked around the room, every eye now on him. I didn't come here to ask for justice. I came to tell you I'm not done. I will be your reckoning. Behind the glass, Nadia stood watching. Her hands shook. Not from fear. From knowing that no law degree could prepare her for the power of memory when it is finally spoken. The car ride from the halberd was quiet. Nadia sat in the back seat, soaked in sweat and ash. She clutched the flash drive so tightly in her palm that her fingers trembled. Ernest drove without speaking. His face was calm, but beneath that surface was a fury carved into stillness like a soldier in a foxhole watching the sky burn. Delta sat upright in the passenger seat, ears alert, every so often turning his head to check on Nadia. In those brief glances there was something more than instinct. Almost as if he too had made a vow to protect her. After 10 minutes, Ernest finally spoke. Was it clean? Nadia took a moment. The room had redundant encryption, and the recovery sequence triggered a hard trace. Roy held them off. I copied as much as I could. Did you see him go down? She nodded. Just once. Ernest pulled over into a dark alley. Killed the engine, turned around. Then you need to understand this. From here on out, you're not a witness. You're a liability. Every camera, every account, every sensor around that floor is being reviewed by people who know how to disappear bodies. They already tried to erase him, Nadia said. They won't stop. No, Ernest replied. They won't. That's why we don't just leak it. We weaponize it. They arrived at a decommissioned metro station just before dawn. Ernest led Nadia down through a broken turnstile, past rusted tracks and graffiti-covered tunnels until they reached a steel hatch sealed with a chain. He unlocked it. Inside, a makeshift command center. Generators, routers, paper maps taped to the walls. And a printer, still warm. Nadia looked around. This is where you disappeared to? Ernest pulled open a drawer and handed her a file labeled Up Palisade. No, he said. This is where I started remembering. Inside the file were photographs of civilians from Windlock, matched with U.S. foster system IDs. Dozens, some children, some now adults. They called it recovery relocation, Ernest said, but it was really disposal. They split up the survivors. Changed names, records vanished. That room in the halberd? It was a junction node. An echo chamber for every voice that got silenced. Nadia flipped the pages slowly. These people think they were abandoned, because they were. But now they have a face to remember. You. She looked at him. What about Amir? Ernest walked to a side table. Pulled a stack of letters from a drawer. He's still writing, Ernest said. Every month, to a dead address. A boy trying to find a ghost. Nadia swallowed the lump rising in her throat. We need to find him. 2 days later, they stood outside a small auto garage in Norfolk, Virginia. Amir Rezvani, now 17, was under a Camaro hood, earbuds in, grease on his shirt. He looked up as they approached, then froze. Delta wagged once. Ernest removed his hat. You grew taller, he said. Amir blinked. I thought you were a dream. Ernest smiled gently. Most ghosts are. Until they knock. They sat in the garage for hours, Nadia explained. Ernest filled in gaps. Amir listened. Then he went to the back, returned with a small tin box. Inside, drawings, photos, a coin with Ernest's unit insignia. I kept it all, Amir said, even when they said I made it up. Ernest placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. Then it's time to make them remember. That night, they assembled everyone. Left on the list, survivors, witnesses, one retired journalist who once filed a report on Windlock and was blacklisted 2 weeks later. The room was a VFW hall, dimly lit and heavy with memory. One by one, they shared. Broken Pashto. Rough English, drawings. One girl had scars. Another brought a shoe she'd worn during the raid. All remembered the man who spoke every tongue. All remembered the dog. Delta walked the room like a pilgrim. Nadia recorded everything. At 2:17 a.m., they uploaded the first video, a 3-minute segment of the halberd footage. Overlaid with, they called it a rescue. This is what rescue looked like. Within 4 hours, it had 1.2 million views. By morning, Hashtag Windlock Files was trending in 5 countries. They weren't supposed to know each other. A war orphan from Afghanistan. A disgraced field operative presumed dead. A law intern who never had the right last name. A retired war dog. And the silent ghosts of behind in a hotel floor no one rented. But sometimes, unlikely connections are the only ones that matter. In the days following the release of the Windlock footage, the internet ignited. First came disbelief, then rage. Then silence, a stunned, corporate, governmental pause, as if entire institutions had inhaled at once and forgot how to exhale. By the third day, the video had over 30 million views. Hashtags emerged. Hashtag Earnest Lives, hashtag Delta Remembers, hashtag Ghost Unit 243B, hashtag We Are Windlock. Nadia watched it unfold from a safe house in Philadelphia, where Ernest had taken her after Amir's garage was quietly raided the night before. Amir sat in the corner, hoodie up, sketching over old letters. On the floor lay Delta, still, always watching. Ernest was at the desk, organizing printouts, encrypted drives, notes, a war room born of trauma and necessity. The footage was just the match, Ernest muttered. Now we build the fire. They called. The next step, Project Resonance. Not a counterattack. A chain reaction. They began contacting those on Ernest's long list of past allies. Interpreters, retired intel agents who had been forced out after questioning the mission. Some refused. Some hesitated. But a few said yes. They met virtually. Voice masked, location routed through layers of VPNs and noise. Every call began with a passphrase. The door never closed. We just stopped knocking. One of the first to respond was Elena Rivas, a former NSA translator who had nearly lost her career when she flagged anomalies in civilian kill reports. Another was Dr. Kamal Farouk, a neurologist in New Jersey who had treated PTSD survivors from the Windlock region without knowing why they all shared the same scars. And then came Jabari Knox, once a tech analyst embedded with state, now working night shifts at a call center. When he saw the footage, he wept for an hour. Then he sent Nadia a compressed file with the subject line, proof they knew. Inside, metadata, emails, mission memos. Intercepts that placed the Durand-led contractor team at Windlock with full U.S. authorization and knowledge of civilian presence. It was the missing piece. They uploaded it on day 6. This time, the video wasn't edited. No music. Just raw data, screenshots, voice recordings, memo headers. It ended with Amir looking directly into the camera, saying in quiet English, "I was 8. He spoke to me like I mattered. He pulled me from the fire. You tried to erase him, but he didn't vanish. He found us." Again. That video broke the dam. Congressional aides began leaking statements. Whistleblower. Lawyers offered support. Journalists previously silenced came forward. And on the 7th day, a live town hall broadcast aired from a warehouse in Baltimore. They called it The Reckoning. Ernest stood at a podium. Beside him, Nadia, Amir, Dr. Farouk, Alina, Jabari, and Delta, wearing a service vest with patches from 5 countries. In the crowd, survivors, veterans, press. Ernest spoke. I was sent to collect intelligence. But what I found were people, children, names, families. They told me to forget. I chose to remember. And I remember all of you. Cheers. Applause. A chant began. Ernest. 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 He held up a hand. No, it's not about me. It's, about what they buried, and who they did it to. Then Amir stepped forward. You called me a refugee statistic, but I am a witness. And I am done being quiet. The next day, a senator called for a full investigation. The Halberd Hotel was placed under federal review. Duran's company went offline, but not everyone was. Celebrating. Nadia opened her inbox to a message with no subject line. Inside, a photo of her parents' house. Below it, Keep digging, and we bury more than truth. She showed Ernest. He stared for a long moment. Then we go public faster. We don't wait for their permission. The hearing room in D.C. wasn't large, but it felt historic. The walls were lined with journalists, legal observers, and silent men in suits who never blinked. Cameras were banned, but microphones were everywhere. On the bench sat 5 members of the Congressional Subcommittee on Defense Oversight. Behind them, the seal of the United States. Above it, the motto, E pluribus unum. Out of many one. The irony wasn't lost on Ernest. He sat at the witness table in a simple black suit. No medals, no flags. Just memory. Nadia sat to his right. Legal counsel and moral shield. Amir sat behind them, flanked by Elena and Jabari. Delta lay at Ernest's feet, still as stone. The chairwoman tapped her gavel. Mr. Ernest Halle, you are now under oath. Please begin. Ernest adjusted the microphone. Windlock was never about rescue, he began. It was about leverage. For over 4 hours, Ernest testified. He recounted operations, code name authorizations, translated communications, body counts, survivors. He spoke of the halberd, of room 713, of the moment he decided silence was no longer survival. Then he introduced the exhibit. This, he said, holding up the drive, is not a weapon. It's a ledger of shame, and I intend for you to read every line. He plugged it in. Documents filled the overhead screen. Mission authorizations, time-stamped memos, intel redacted without cause. A contractor pay ledger signed by Duran himself. The room held its breath. Nadia stepped forward next. I am not a soldier, she said. But I know injustice when I see it. And when those who commit it wear uniforms or carry flags, that makes it worse, not better. Amir followed. He said nothing for the first minute. Then, you built silence around me. But I lived in the middle of the noise. That's what war sounds like. News broke within minutes. Windlock whistleblower testifies on Capitol Hill. Ghost Agent Holly reveals secret intel room in luxury hotel. Survivor turned witness. Meet Amir Rezvani. Outside, protesters gathered. Some held signs that read justice for Windlock. Others, Ernest told the truth. But not everyone clapped. That night, while Ernest and Nadia debriefed in a secured safe house, a drone passed by their window. Unmarked. Delta barked once. The window shattered. Ernest grabbed Nadia, pulled her down. Explosion, smoke, chaos. When the dust cleared, the building was gone, but not the people. The blast didn't kill them. Ernest pulled Nadia out of the rubble with one hand while Delta dragged Amir from the edge of the staircase that had collapsed inward like a mouth swallowing its own tongue. Blood mixed with plaster dust. The floor was fractured steel and cracked rebar. But they lived. Delta's side was bleeding. Amir screamed. Ernest pressed his palm to the dog's ribs. Stay, you're not done yet. Outside, chaos reigned. Sirens, smoke. CNN banners turned red. Safe house explosion rocks Capitol witness. Protection program. Whistleblower targeted. Halle survives attack. Treason or truth? It wasn't just one building. That night, 4 other witnesses were attacked across 3 states. 2 died. The message was clear. No more testimony. No more noise. But Ernest had already survived the forgetting. He knew what to do with fear. He turned it into fuel. They relocated to an underground data center built into a hillside in rural Vermont, a Cold War holdover. No internet. No signal. Just walls 2 feet thick and maps from the 1970s. There, they planned the reckoning. Nadia drafted a federal injunction against the contracting firm. Elena traced the dummy corporations used to launder military payments. Jabari began releasing coded drops onto the dark web. Dossiers, logs, time-stamped field. Orders. Ernest wrote letters. To senators, to students, to survivors. To his younger self, one read, You were never erased. You were just paused. Now, resume. The public response fractured. Half of America chanted, "We believe Ernest." The other half said, "Another traitor with a microphone." But both sides watched, and that gave them power. Then came the subpoena. The International Criminal Court requested formal documentation of U.S. violations under Ernest's intelligence. A first in American history. The president released a statement. "We will not extradite heroes based on edited video and conspiracy blogs." But the world was already watching. At a candlelight vigil in D.C., Amir stepped to a podium and said, "You can call us liars, but you can't unkill the dead. And I'm tired of growing up in their shadows." That week, Ernest collapsed. Exhaustion, infection, years of untreated injuries. He fell in the corridor of the bunker, and Delta lay beside him, UNMOVING. When he woke, Nadia was there. "We keep going," she whispered. "Because they can't delete us all." Ernest nodded weakly. "Then burn it. Everything we have. Burn it across the sky." Ernest lay on the cot, breath shallow, the bunker dim except for the flicker of surveillance monitors overhead. Rain thudded above ground. A storm rolled across the Vermont hills. The world, it seemed, had come to a standstill, but Nadia didn't stop. She paced before a whiteboard filled with maps, timelines, and names written in red. The flash drive labeled "Final Account" sat on the table, humming with encryption heat. He said, "Burn it across the sky," she whispered. Amir looked up. "So, we give it to everyone." Elena opened her laptop. Multiple drops, not just news networks, military forums, internal databases, education platforms, every layer of the internet. Jabari nodded. "We don't just leak it, we teach it." The next 48 hours became a war of light. The team launched what would be known as the Delta Cascade, Phase 1. The memory engine, a single web page, black background, one line of text. The truth was never classified, only ignored. Below it, a live feed countdown. Phase 2, the drops encrypted packets of documents, audio logs, whistleblower depositions, translated survivor testimony. Phase 3, the names and interactive interface. Type in your name, and it searches all known files for overlap with Windlock, the Halberd, or related operations. Within 6 hours, traffic crashed 3 major DN servers. Within 12, international media had picked up the story. Within 24, 7 world governments issued formal requests for joint investigations. Ernest awoke to Delta resting its chin on his chest. "Still breathing, huh?" he rasped. Nadia knelt beside him. "We did it. The final account is out." He smiled faintly. "And the sky still hasn't fallen." "No," she said. "But the silence has." The final blow came not from government, but from within the people. Teachers printed the testimonies. Students shared the stories. A retired colonel turned in his medals on live television. One news anchor, in tears, read aloud Amir's drawing captions from the day of the raid. Public trust didn't shatter. It transformed. People didn't just believe. They remembered. At Ernest's request, they returned to the Halberd one last time. Room 713 had been sealed again, but they didn't go there. They stood in the lobby. Ernest in a worn black coat, Nadia beside him, Amir holding Delta's leash. The cameras arrived, not to accuse, to honor. A plaque was unveiled near the reception desk, in memory of those who spoke when told to be silent. This place remembers. Below it, the Windlock account. Ernest Haley, Unit 243B Delta K9 Intel. Nadia Lee, Civil WITNS. They walked outside. Rain had stopped. Amir looked up. "You think we really changed anything?" Ernest smiled, watching the clouds break. "Not yet," he said. "But we reminded them that forgetting has a cost. And we made them pay a piece of it." Delta barked once, a sound like history finding its voice again. He didn't ask to be a hero. He just refused to let the silence win. In a world where truth costs more than lies, Ernest Hawley paid in memory, loyalty, and pain. But he didn't pay alone. Nadia stood. Jabari spoke. Delta barked. And someone, somewhere, listened. If this story meant something to you, share it. Speak it. And subscribe. Because we'll keep telling the stories that almost disappeared.